Hi everyone, I am Styleboy and I read books. So over the last, I honestly want to say during lockdown from 2020 to like now, I've actually got kind of into reading, and of course there's been like waves of like up and down. So for like the last 3 years I have been reading actually quite consistently, and so I wanted to just talk about all the books that I've been loving and all the books I didn't like. Again, we have these, and then we've also got some more next to me. Without further ado, let's start my first ever book video. There's so many books, and I literally have just finished one, and currently I'm about to start this little graphic novel called Bloom, which at Gaze the Word, which is the bookshop I go to, they said this is like rom-com meets Bake Off. And I fell in love, so I needed it instantly. If I finish this by the time I upload this, I will give you updates on this. But I'll start off with my most recent read, which is actually Ace of Spades by Faride Abdike Yemide. If I mispronounced it, I'm so sorry. But this book, which again, I'm not usually like a thriller bitch. If you know me, firstly, all these books are gay.
Good luck, girl. I'm going to brunch. Kisses.
And secondly, I'm like usually like a rom-com kind of thing, but I'm trying to expand my book's horizon, and this is a thriller, and oh my god, when I tell you I lived for it. It's basically about these two kids, Devon and Chiamaka, tell me if I mispronounced it, but they are both the only black kids in a private high school. One's trying to make it out to the end of the year, and one is almost like this queen bee figure, which, yes, I live for that shit. And basically someone has been like around, firstly starting out making rumors, and it gets more and more scarier. And honestly, again, I wasn't expecting to like fall in love with this as much as I did, but people have been saying this is almost like Gossip Girl meets Get Out, which I have no other word because it's so true. Because at first you think it's just this like gossipy, bitchy kind of thing, and then it almost has this like Get Out sense because it's a lot to do with like institutionalized racism. Like it's dark. I'm not gonna deny this is quite a dark read, but I can't deny I really liked it. I really like the characters. I love the story progression. I love like the final girl moment. No spoilers, but I lived. I was like, yes, bitch. Really did love this. It was really interesting, and the moment I was like recapping it and being like, well, at the moment it doesn't feel that thrillery, and then the moment I continued reading this, we were in thriller category. It's amazing. I love this. I would 1000% recommend this. Let's talk about another love before we get into someone I didn't like. This is the thing that began it technically all. I wouldn't be here if we weren't talking about Heartstopper. Like, Heartstopper is basically the quintessential gay reading list. If you've not read these, what are you doing with your life? These are absolutely adorable. I'm not gonna like say what it's about because if you've watched the series then you know, and you know I loved season 1. These are absolutely cute. These are really good for people who don't like to read or want to get into reading, because a graphic novel you can finish within a day. I've literally finished each of these within one day. They're just so cute. I love the drawing style. I love the story, and it's just so adorable, and I love Nick and Charlie together. Obviously I stan, so it makes it more fun that I have now another graphic novel to read, because I've not read one in a bit, because I don't think any of these books are graphic novels, so I'm really excited to continue just with the rest of the series when there's 2 more coming out. Ooh! But again, I do have to say, I prefer this series because it goes into other characters more, like Tao and Al. Again, I'm rooting for them. I prefer that, so for me, that's why I like the series a little bit more. These don't go into it as much, it more focuses on Nick and Charlie, which I don't mind, and there's little like extra comics in there about their stories, but yeah, so if you wanted to only focus on Nick and Charlie, you're gonna prefer the books, but if you want the other characters, you're gonna prefer the series. Now we have a pair, because these are both by the same author, and I actually asked for these for Christmas because every time I visited Gaze the Word, I always wanted to read these and I didn't, so I asked them for Christmas, and I think when I went on my first big reading like, I actually wanted to read one of these books, which are both by Aiden Thomas, which is a Latinx trans writer, and there are these two, and this was the one I wanted to read, so I'll start off with this one and I'll get onto this one. So, Cemetery Boys. Damn, actually, maybe I do like a bit of darkness. Day of the Dead kind of theming. So basically this kid, Yadriel, wants to prove that he is a brujo to the rest of his family, and because he's also trans, and so he actually tries to summon his cousin because there's been like an emergency. He ends up summoning like a bad boy, and then they go through their adventures, and honestly this is a really good enemies to lovers. At first I was like, oh really, we're doing an enemies to lovers, and then I was hooked bitch, I was fucking hooked. And I love the theming. Again, I'm such a big fan of like the Day of the Dead and stuff like that. So when I got to read this, I was like, I really liked it. I liked how it was coming of age, but it wasn't coming out. And there's other books, and I've kind of noticed reading a lot of these books that coming out is the form of coming of age, which for some I don't mind, and some I actually enjoyed, e.g. Heartstopper, because I think you could really connect with the characters. But there's only so much that YA like coming of age can do, and so I love this because it was kind of this coming of age of Yadriel in a different sense than coming of himself. I loved this. I loved also the relationship between him and Julian. So beautiful and so cute. I was like, ooh. It was just so adorable. I loved it. And this was YA, but it didn't feature school, which is another thing I really like. Like, it had some elements, but not really. And again, no complaints. I really liked this. And, you know, I was rooting for them and getting good twists and turns. It's dark, it's interesting. Like, I think this is darker, as in like theming wise, than this. However, there's another book by Aiden, which I was like, meh about, which is the Sunbearer Trials. I read this and I noticed there's a lot of similarities between Aiden's work, which is that the lead is trans, which I'm cool because the author is trans, so I love that. I love reading stories that aren't basically just about a white gay guy. Give me more to do with the community, so I was cool with that. But I kind of noticed there's other themes, which is that there's always a character who's an outsider that ends up being kind of villainous at the end of it, and the other character who's an outsider ends up becoming a hero. And this one, I think this is very fantasy. Like, this is one that I think if you like fantasy, you're gonna absolutely adore this. For me, I think this was too far into fantasy to the point where like I was like having to be a bit confused because I had to constantly recapping like what was this, what was this, what was this. And so for me, I don't think there was a problem with the author, there's a problem with my choice. So that's my first thing. Secondly, don't leave me on a cliffhanger, bitch. Of course it's because it's gonna be another book out, but I was just so like, what? The trials were fun to read. I think there was supposed to be another Enemies to Lovers, but I wasn't that convinced. And honestly, I was like, meh, this isn't my favorite book ever. If you liked Percy Jackson and The Hunger Games, this is the book for you. This just isn't for me. I'd rather read this one again, honestly. The writing's not bad, it's just like the story wasn't my particular favorite. You know? This one is a megally popular book to the point where it's become a movie. I have, I think, unpopular opinions about this, which is Red, White, and Royal Blue. Like, if you don't know the story, an Enemies to Lovers with the president of the United States son and the prince or one of the princes of England, like, basically hate each other. They have sex and then they fall in love. This book I have very unpopular opinions about. Firstly, my main problem, which again is my theming thing, is that they actually talk about politics quite a lot. And so I kind of got bored, as in like, not as in like social politics, but as in like proper how to run a government kind of shit. And I was like, oh God. Secondly, the chapters are fucking thick and long. Like, I think this book took me the longest to finish because those damn chapters took 5 years. And the problem is so much happened in each chapter. And so for me, I got so bored. Thirdly, I think what kind of ruined to it is that I know who was casted as Alex and Henry, like, while reading. And so when I was reading this, it kind of ruined the fantasy for me a bit. I was like, oh, these could be like 2 people. And kind of ended up feeling a bit fanfiction-esque.
I just can't afford for you to fall in love with me.
Okay, wait a minute. No, that's not what I meant when I said...
yourself, your majesty.
It's your royal highness. I don't know how many times I have to tell you that.
Sorry.
The sex scenes were fucking hot. Oh, I read one and then I decided to self-pleasure myself because it was fucking hot. And then I read one on a train, I was like, fuck me. And also, I just wish they had more moments of joy because a lot of their relationship between each other was just like angst. And I don't mind a bit of angst, but there's like only so much I can deal with. Yeah, this book was fine. I don't think it's as bad, but I think there's better books out there, particularly in this genre, and I'll get to those later. Just wasn't it for me. Talking about books that made me feel things. We actually get onto this one, which I actually asked for a birthday present from Ash. Hey Queen. And it's Chloe Hayden's book, Different and Not Less. Now, I've spoken about this book so many times on my channel. As an autistic person, as soon as she said she was releasing this, I was like, I need my hands on this now. And this book is really good. She does so well. I would say this is really good for people who are just either trying to discover they are autistic or to people who aren't autistic but want to care for those. Because I did feel very seen in a couple of moments, especially when she was talking about like previous like younger experiences. Like I was like, yep. But there's a lot of statistics in this and a lot of like information. I've cried to this book plenty of times. I think like a couple of times. This book made me cry on the train. So it is quite emotionally heavy at moments. The good thing with Chloe though is that she does give trigger warnings in the book. So if there's a section you can't read or if it's gonna trigger you, you can skip it. And I'm really glad she does that from the book. I have to say, reading the ending made me really just feel proud. And so Chloe, you did amazing and I love this. Let me go on to another book I really like with females, Star-Crossed. This is like 13-year-old shit and I lived for it. Basically, this is about a 13-year-old named Matty. Basically, Matty's been asked to step in as Romeo and there's a girl who gets to step in as Juliet and she feels things. It's bi girl fantasies. I fucking loved this. I loved this so much. This is like an underrated gem because, you know, majority of these books are quite like YA or like young adult. So this was like child, like she's 13. When I tell you, reading this, I was like, damn, this is literally me at 13. So it was just so fun. The chapters were really quick. I loved the characters. It was just fun. This was a fun little bi girl read and I lived for this. Like this is one that I'm really annoyed that no one talks about, probably because it's written from a 13-year-old's perspective, but I absolutely adore this and 1000% just read this. It's fun. It's such a fun time. From a book I love to a book I actually really did not like, a little bit of country. This book I really did not like for many reasons. Let me explain. Firstly, this bitch.
My makeup's all ready.
I realized another thing that I don't love within books that much, which is the character that is not out with the character that is out. Now, of course, this is real, and there are books I really love about this, e.g. like Heartstopper. Like Heartstopper does this excellently. Heartstopper does this so well because at the end of it, it's very validating because it's like, I still want to be with you, I'm just not ready to be out. And I was like, thank you. This bitch is a people-pleasing, self-sabotaging character and I hated reading from his perspective so much because there's so many things he does. Like he's just such a shitty boyfriend and you're just like, what? Like a shitty boyfriend who's also incredibly at moments selfish compared to the other boy who honestly is just trying. Emmett wants to just be a gay country star and like follow his favorite idol and Luke's like, I want you to destroy your idol's life. He gave DL energy and I was like, ew. I don't know, I just really did not like it. And I think that really heavily ruined the book for me. It made me really not like this book and I think honestly, I just wouldn't recommend it. And I also feel like we didn't really get much about Emmett because Emmett's story ended up becoming about Alex, which really upset me because the reason why I like Heartstopper so much is because you have their individual stories and they have their own paths, like Nick and Charlie. Despite being together, they both have individual perspectives. This doesn't because it feels like Emmett's story is about Alex's reactions with a couple of sprinkled other things and it's just like, talking about DL guys, the gay best friend. Now this one is a way older perspective because I think this book was like, what, they were like 17. This guy's in like his 30s and basically it's about Dom, who is basically the gay best friend for a couple that's gonna get married. Both the husband and the wife, he has to switch between hyper masculine and hyper feminine. So fun, also hilarious and messy. This is like if the Real Housewives was a book, it'd be this.
Whatever that means. Bitches is mad.
It was so fucking messy and I was like, I must read more. Also funny, I did really like the writing style of this because it felt very gay and I just was like living for it. I think especially from the like YA romance and the thriller darkness, this is such a nice breather. I preferred him over this dude. There's another sex scene in here which is pretty hot. If they were gonna make this a movie, like Jonathan Bailey has to play the lead. I just really like this. It was just such a fun read and the author just did such a good job of it. And also, this is a coming of age story of just realizing yourself a little bit, like how not to people please and how people pleasing, like the consequences of it after a while, which I kind of needed because at moments I always feel scared in case I am becoming a people pleaser or that I am people pleasing too much. So this is just a good reminder that like just to be authentically you and not messy or passive aggressive. But it's also fun to read messy people. Alright, we have 4 books left. So let's actually get on to my favorite book next, which is The Black Flamingo by Dean Atta. This is basically about Michael. Michael is, I think, Black Greek Cypriot, and basically about him growing up. That's it, growing up as a queer Black man. I love this because it's not like a regular read, it's actually poetry. Like the whole story is told within poems, and I loved this. This is like my favorite book ever. Like, I'm not kidding you, this is my favorite book ever. I adore the story. I adore the way it was written. I love how it not only goes into queerness but also race. I just love this, and I think this is a really beautiful read. Beautifully written, beautifully done, outstanding and incredible and so different, like in the style of writing, which makes me want to see if there's any more books like this, like poetry style stories, because it was so beautiful and I just love this. I have no other words apart from I just really love this book. And if you've definitely not read this book, I 100% recommend you to do so. And another book I actually really love that I read straight after that, which is actually another part of my favorite book, is Felix Ever After by Kason Calendar? Oh, did I say this is by Dean Atta? Yes, this was the main reason why I bought the book. This book I love so much. This is definitely like one of those like rom-com-y YA that I just adored, and it's about Felix who has never been in love but wants to be in it, and then there's someone like dead naming them around the school and kind of like a transphobic dick because he is Black, queer, and trans. It's that mystery element which I love. It's got a lot about love and about crushes and stuff like that, but a lot to do with coming out and coming of age, because he questions his gender identity, but also questions himself as a person. And so when you're reading all of this together, I just think it's such a lovely mix, because to me, I'm so much more interested into reading a book like this versus reading just a straight up romance, because this really delves in deep within a character, and I love this, and I love coming of age stories. And also this has a little cute friends to lovers shit, and I kind of love it. I think this was really beautifully done, and honestly this is another part of my favorite books ever. I have no other words, I just adore this. Next book we got is the Meet Cute Diaries by Emery Lee, which is about Noah. He's part of a popular Tumblr blog called the Meet Cute Diaries, which is about trans meet cutes and the happily ever afters, but they're all fake. When people start to recognize that it might be fake, Noah has to think of a plan, and then comes Drew, and then they end up going there. So it's kind of like fake dating, but not fully. I won't say any more, but there is a character in this who also has a coming out kind of thing with gender identity, different pronouns, and it was just nice to read because I was like, oh, like we don't really read about different pronouns. The most is like he, she, and they. The author uses ze and they during the story. This was another really just like fun read, because don't get me wrong, I love a read where I'm like hooked to the end of my seat and I'm like, what's gonna fucking happen next? I have to know. But I'm also the person who loves like just a fun read, and this felt very like high schooly and just enjoyable, and sometimes I just love a read like that because they're really fun and they're really just a good time. So I'd also recommend this book as well. And lastly is 100 Boyfriends by Brontes Prunell, which is basically a bunch of short stories about just queer love, queer Black love during the, I want to say like 70s and 80s. They're not all ending in happy ever afters, but it was a bit confusing, I can't deny, because I have to say, I think this didn't really explain it well. So it was kind of like a guessing game where like one ended and then the next one, I was like, who is? And then there were moments where they started like talking about the same person but like at different points, and I was like, where? This is horny. Well, not as horny though, because it's like they have sex but there's not actual sex scenes. Some of them are sad and intense, some of them are like the most shallow shit ever and a bit messy. This was cute, a bit confusing though. So if you're into more adult reads, you'll like this. That are all the books that I have read within the last 3 years. I hope you enjoyed this because this was just a fun gay ass time. I guess I'll see you guys next week with a brand new video. Please make sure you subscribe because there might be more of like these coming if you like this. I'll see you next week. Bye everyone.